everybody, this is Language Mantra channel, Advanced English, session number 20. We have modal verbs today to discuss. Modal verbs sometimes are known as just modals or modal auxiliaries, but it is very popularly known as modal verbs. Modal verbs are a small group of verbs. Only 12 verbs are there. This small group of verbs are somehow different from ordinary lexical verbs, main verbs in sentences, and also they are different from auxiliary verbs. So let's see those verbs first. We have can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would. These 8 forms, actually 4 verbs with their past tense forms, they are 8. This is the first set because these verbs have at least one additional form in the past tense. Now, must is always single. It must be must only, nothing else. Then ought is always followed by to, and it does not have any other form. So because of this to, it is exceptional here. Ought to is treated as a semi-modal, and in the final group we have dare and need. Dare and need means these 2 verbs, sometimes they behave like ordinary verbs, lexical verbs, and sometimes they behave like modal verbs. That's why these 2 verbs are exceptional in this list. So these are the verbs that are called modal verbs. Now we have to see the characteristics of these verbs. Why do we say that these verbs do not behave like ordinary verbs or auxiliary verbs? Let's see that. Number 1 point is that these verbs do not change or behave like other verbs. How? For example, he can run first. He can run first. Normally what happens? In the present tense, third person singular number, we always use S. In that case, it should have been he can run first. No. Can is always can. It cannot be changed. This is the characteristic of this modal verb. You cannot change can. While conjugating, can always remains can. So it is not that you can say he can run first. Never. It is always he can run first. Now, question form by inversion. Normally, question form we do, for example, say, do you want to go there? Do you want? All of a sudden you get a do auxiliary verb from the sky and put in the beginning of the sentence and make it a question. So, do you want to go there? But here we don't have that option. If any modal verb is there, you just bring the modal verb in the beginning of the sentence and it will become a question. Can you help me? It is not like that. Do you can help me? This is absurd. You cannot do that. Because do you can, one auxiliary verb, one modal verb, these 2 things do not match together. You cannot use auxiliary verb and modal verbs together. Just modal verb, then modal verb, and if it permits auxiliary verb, no problem. So we have to ask like this, can you help me? Or when I want to make it negative, I do not go there. So do and not. But here just insert not and it will become a negative sentence. You shouldn't do that. You should not, you shouldn't do that. Not, you don't should, never. This is very clumsy. You never do that. You shouldn't do that. This is enough. So what happens here? That modal verb comes with a not shouldn't together. You shouldn't do that. It is a nice sentence. So you see how modal verbs are used in negative sentence and interrogative sentence. Whenever you have this modal verb, it replaces auxiliary verb. It behaves like auxiliary verb, but it does not have all the forms the auxiliary verb can have. It has only one or sometimes two forms, and that's all. So these are the things you have to remember, that it has, these modal verbs have their own logic in terms of making a sentence negative, in terms of making a sentence say interrogative, or even in sentence like he can run, simple sentence. Now, where do you use modal verbs? Normally, modal verbs are used whenever you want to convey some idea that something is necessary, or say something is expected, or say something is possible, or we are not something sure about, or something did not happen. So there is always a question of ambience. This is modal verbs. It creates a kind of ambience, it creates a kind of mood, it creates a kind of modality. That is special about modal verbs. And always there is a kind of uncertainty, vagueness, hypothetical issues, or some doubt, some expectation. In these cases, normally we use modal verbs. We never use modal verbs for something that definitely exists or something that definitely existed. For that, modal verb is not at all required. Now let's see some examples so that things become a little bit more clear. Now example. Well, let me see if I can help you. Well, let me see if I can help you. When I say I can help you, exactly the help is not taking place. I can help you means I can. Can has two meanings. I can break this pain means I am physically strong enough to do that, but I am not breaking it. And say I can meet you tomorrow. I am not meeting you, but maybe I'll meet you tomorrow. So you see that vagueness, that uncertainty is there. In that case we use this modal verb can. Well, let me see if I can help you. I may come tomorrow if I have time. I may come tomorrow means I may not come tomorrow. So something say 50-50. It depends on the person you are talking, how much you know him, whether he is say in a position to come or not. So many factors are there, but I may come tomorrow if I have time. Condition is there, if I have time. So you are not sure. Number 3, Roy could be in Calcutta, Delhi or Mumbai. Nobody knows. Then again that vagueness, uncertainty. You do not know whether Roy is in Calcutta or Delhi, in Mumbai or in any other city whatsoever. So you see how modal verbs creates a kind of modality, mood, ambience. 4, he must help his ailing mother. He must help. He is not helping maybe. Or maybe this is an assertion. Somebody says he must help his ailing mother. It's necessary. It's an assertion. In that case we use modal verb. You ought to behave like a gentleman. It is expected that you should behave like a gentleman. Should and ought, very much similar. Ought is more formal, although should has some ethical, moral implications, whereas ought to may not have that, but strong enough. Now, what else could you do there? Maybe I understand your situation. You couldn't do anything else. The last one, got it. You needn't tell me anything. Got it means I understand. You needn't tell me anything. But we don't get the answer. So he assumes something. That assumption may not be very much clear, but he assumes. And one thing more, need not. We told that need can be need and dare. These two verbs can be used as normal verbs, say ordinary verbs, and these two verbs can be used as modals also. So here Got it? You needn't tell me. You need not tell me. Need not. Not. You do not need to tell me. You do not need to tell me. This becomes the normal sentence in ordinary sense. But here, in as a modal verb, it does not require you do not, etc. It just says you needn't tell me anything. So you see, these are the uses of modal verbs. Just take care to use them. If there is any uncertainty, vagueness, then something that is it should happen, then something hypothetical, then something possible, in those cases or in these cases only we use modal verbs. So these are not many in number. So I think this much we have to talk about. In our next session, we will be discussing, say, should have, could have, would have, might have, etc. Try to, share it with your friends. You subscribe yourself and write comments. We need feedback so that we can make our sessions more, useful. That's all. So have a nice time. We'll be meeting next time again. Thank you very much.